Today I'm going to be making a junk journal, and this is the one that I'm going to be using for the new prompts that I have launched, which if you haven't seen, I'll leave a link down below if you want to check out free fortnightly prompts that I'm going to be doing. It's called Catalysts and Curiosities, and it's a really relaxed, sort of like slow crafting vibe where I give you some little snippets, maybe some color palettes, some materials to consider, and then over the 2 weeks we can work in our journals, take what we think is interesting and just see how it evolves in our journals. So I wanted to make a new journal for this, partially because I just love making a new journal. I mean, who doesn't? But also I just wanted something that felt a little bit like a fresh start, I suppose, just because I'm diving into this new way of working. And this doesn't mean that I'm going to be working in this journal and not dipping into the other journals that I have on the go, because I'm definitely guilty of having more than one journal on the go. Like, let me know down below in the comments how many journals you're working on at the moment, because I feel like we all try to be really disciplined and have one journal on the go, and then you have that sort of, oh, that would be an interesting one to make, and oh, let me just try this. So I have a few journals on the go. Maybe I'll do a video kind of sharing what my current journaling situation is, because I have, like I said, a few different ones that I'm working on at the moment, and they're all slightly different, which I think makes it a little bit more okay that I'm working in multiple ones at the same time. So the one that I'm making here is roughly a standard traveler's notebook insert size. So I basically just used a page from one of those as my template for this, and then I'm doing the sort of patchwork page process that I do for my no-sew journals. So this is kind of like a hybrid of different techniques, because I basically wanted to use up some of my scrap papers, and my friend Daisy also had some junk journaling like ephemera packs that I had ordered, and so I wanted to use some of those papers as well. And so I wanted to create a junk journal that just had a really eclectic feel to it. And I guess just because I was thinking about the whole catalysts and curiosities thing, I don't know, I felt like that kind of fit how I was thinking for this, because I definitely want to use this journal more as not just create a page and that's the finished page. I really want to take my time working in all of the different areas of the page. So I think having the patchwork style of the pages will really suit this style of journaling, because it will allow me to just dip in and out, which I think is why the paint sample journal I have, which if you've seen me working in that, and I kind of dip in between different pages and adding different things to it, I think I really enjoy that way of working. So I think that's where it's come from working in that paint sample journal. And yeah, not having that pressure to create something completely finished, like a journal page in one go. So as I said, I'm building up the pages from all sorts of different papers. So here I've just got some brown paper, and I've decided to just use the entire sheet for one page, and have that be a bit of a contrast then between some of the pages where I've built them in that more patchworky style, just to give it a little bit of variance, I suppose, when it comes to working in this journal. I've also tried to pick pages that are a little bit more on the plainer side, and that's not necessarily because I'm going to be using them as places to do writing, although I might, jot the odd quote in there or something like that, but that's not how I tend to approach my journals. So I've given myself a bit more of that blank space, or areas where, you know how you have a page and you think, okay, there's a bit of text there, but I can kind of see the plain negative space around it, and how you could work into that. I've kind of tried to incorporate a bit more of that into these pages, just so that I have that breathing space between something to respond to on the page, whether it's to work with it or to cover it up, and then also just a bit more blank space, I suppose, so that I can then come to the page with whatever I want to. So as I'm exploring these prompts and working with different materials. So I think I said in the announcement video for this project that I want to approach this almost a little bit like a commonplace book. So I feel like that eclectic and scrapbooky junk journal style will really lend itself to how I'm going to be working in this journal. So as I was putting the pages together, I kept like flicking through them and just sort of getting a feel for how the pages were arranged. And I was moving pages around as well, so having the patterned pages next to something that's a bit plainer, just to give a bit of balance and to not just have like all of the plain pages in the journal in one section and then followed by all of the patterned pages. So I think that's definitely one of my biggest tips if you are putting your journal together. Like, definitely try out different ways of putting the pages together, like just see how they look against one another, because sometimes I find when I'm moving them around, like I'll move the brown paper page, for example, from the front to somewhere near the middle, and it just really complements the book page that then it's next to. And sometimes I can kind of visualize how it's going to potentially work as an actual journal page. So yeah, I definitely like try them out in different ways just to see how they're going to feel for this journal, especially because I'm just doing a normal like pamphlet stitch binding for this, so it's a little bit different from obviously a no-sew journal where I can tear something out if I want to, or I can be a bit more free with how the pages are constructed. Like, there is just obviously one set binding for this, so I wanted to make sure that I was happy with how it was before I bound it. And as far as the number of pages within this insert, so I didn't really count, I'm going to be honest. I just kept like grabbing papers and almost just getting a feel for how they all went together, and just sort of used a little bit of like instinct of, okay, I think this is enough pages, because I'm not going to get my needle through it if I continue adding pages, because there's definitely a balance between, you obviously don't want to add too many pages, and then that will put like stress on the binding as you start to work in the journal and you add your ephemera and all sorts of bits and pieces. Like, it will obviously bulk up when you use the journal, so you don't want to add too many pages. But of course it does depend on the type of papers that you use. So if you use thinner papers, then you'll get away with adding more papers into your journal versus using thicker papers. You're obviously going to want to have less of those. And of course you always want to be careful when you're adding your thinner papers that you are not using ones that are so brittle and fragile that they will just tear at the binding. So I think that's a great way of using them if you use this patchwork method, because you will be able to have the like thicker, sturdier papers on the center of the page where they're going to be sewn into the binding. And then you could mix in those slightly thinner pages on the parts where you're doing more of the patchwork pages. So there's definitely ways around it if you're clever with how you are adding papers to the journal. I mean, you could also tip them in as well. That's another option. And so I did spend a little bit more time just checking that I was happy with how the papers were laid out. And then once I had decided on how they were going to be bound, I needed to pick a cover. So you'll have seen at the beginning of this video, I was cutting out some scrapbook paper, and I thought that I wanted a bit of a like floral, muted, like vintage inspired cover for this book. But then as I was actually making it and adding all the different papers into it, I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, I don't think that the cover is actually going to match the journal that I have put together with all the papers, because I was just thinking like I still had quite a bit of like interest and pattern going on with the journal, and I just thought if I add something that is quite busy, then I think it's going to clash. And I did also want to at some point eventually decorate the cover, and I think that those scrapbook papers that I had at the beginning were very much like great for on their own, and so I don't think they gave me a lot of space to actually grow the journal and add to the cover. Like, I just thought that they were too busy. You can see here as I'm adding them on, I was just not happy. Like if you ever see in my videos where I kind of like pause and I'm a little bit hesitant, that's definitely me sort of thinking like the cogs are whirring and I'm thinking like this is not what I had in mind. So I decided to whip out my trusty brown paper packaging. So this was just an upcycled envelope that I had turned inside out and stuck together just to give it a little bit more sturdiness. And then I was just sort of roughly measuring it and sort of ripping it and folding it to be the size that I wanted for the journal. So like I said, the insert is roughly a standard TN size. I don't have any exact dimensions for you. Likewise with the cover, I just sort of eyeballed it and thought, well, this is about right for a journal, because at the end of the day, I don't really have time for all the measuring. Like I just want to get on with making a journal, and it doesn't need to be precise for me. Like the more imperfect, honestly, the better sometimes. And you can't go wrong with that. So I'm doing just a basic pamphlet stitch here. So this isn't a tutorial. If you want to have like a slowed down, more in-depth instructions on how to actually do this, I'll leave a link down below. I did a tutorial for binding a journal like this, but I just used some brown embroidery thread, which I thought went with the colour scheme that I had quite well. I did debate using like a pink or something that was a little bit more of a pop, but I just ended up going for a brown thread there, and I just made sure to press down some of the pages there after binding it. And then this is the finished journal. So as you can see, I've got all of the different shaped pages, which I absolutely love, and I can't wait to work on them because they also give me room to, you know, extend them. I can see myself maybe doing some fold out pages. I've also got pages there where I have like built-in pockets with the envelopes that I used as part of the patchwork. And then of course I've got the contrast with the plainer pages and the like floral botanical imagery as well going on. So I just really love the way that this journal has turned out, and I think it's got a lot of potential for working in for these prompts. So if you'd like to join in with the prompts, I will leave the link down below where you can subscribe or catch up on the prompts that we're working on for this fortnight. I can't wait to dive into the prompts and show you how I create in this journal.